Most superheroes have a variety of powers that they can rely on when they find themselves in the midst of combat, but not all of a hero's abilities will constantly be taken advantage of. Some characters in the past have altogether stopped using abilities that they've had in the comics previously, whether because that ability no longer makes any sense to the publishers, or because it's something that only comes in handy sporadically. So today we are taking a closer look at exactly that, with our list of the top 10 superheroes with superpowers they never use. Let's get to it. And at number 10, Superman and phasing through objects. There are a lot of tricks up Superman's blue spandex sleeves, many of which have fallen into obscurity or tend to be busted out every now and then when it's convenient. Case in point, his phasing ability, which we've seen in use a handful of times. The very first instant was when it was used in 1958 in an episode of The Adventures of Superman titled The Mysterious Cube. Superman found himself at the mercy of a criminal named Paul Barton, who had hidden himself inside of a cube of super strong metal in an attempt to be declared legally dead so that he would be absolved of his crimes. Not a terrible plan, at least until Superman got involved. And he vibrated his molecules to allow him to phase through the cube and get to Barton. But here's the real kicker. In the comics, Superman uses his phasing abilities during Superman issue 175 in 2001. He did this when he fought against Doomsday in a rematch. You know, the villain from the Death of Superman arc who had a punching match with the Man of Steel until they both punched each other to death but not actually? Well, this time Superman wasn't screwing around. He decided that he should just phase through Doomsday's fist to avoid being seemingly killed and falling into a Kryptonian coma again, because we all know how well that turned out the first time around. Actually, he kinda uses it more so to mock Doomsday, but it's like, dude, if you knew you could do that, why didn't you do it before? Oh right, DC wanted to make money. And at number 9, Iron Man and his jet-powered rollerblades. While Tony Stark does not inherently have superpowers, his Iron Man suit is capable of a whole lot, and it only gets better the more Tony improves upon it. But some of the stunts that he pulled off in the 80s with his suit were a little bit questionable at best, and for obvious reasons have faded into obscurity. Borrowing a page out of Batman's Silver Age era, here we have Iron Man's jet-powered roller skates. Tony was capable of having wheels come out of his suit by rotating his ear discs 1/4 turn. The rollerblades were powered by built-in motors, and Tony had declared enthusiastically that they were the perfect gift for the man who's got everything, so he gifted it to himself. Apparently they were more fun to use than flying, according to him. Also slightly off topic, but we feel it is pressing to mention the iron nipples on his suit that vary in position and height in these panels. Yeah, you can't unsee them now, can you? What's their purpose? I don't think we'll ever know. And at number 8, Hulk and seeing astral projections. Prior to Bruce Banner's astral projection conversation in Avengers Endgame, not a whole lot of people would have believed it's something that the Hulk was capable of. Sure, in the film that is kind of chalked up to the Chosen One, technically speaking, but in the comics the Hulk has the ability to see those on the astral plane, which we've seen him do on multiple occasions. Not only can he see those who astral project, but he can also see dead people, and it's sort of like a sixth sense. He can also take a more interactive role, like in The Incredible Hulk issue 370, where he helped Doctor Strange evade a demon from another dimension, all in the astral plane. Now for obvious reasons it's definitely not his go-to ability, but he has encountered a handful of instances in the past where it has been an aid to him. And at 7, Thor and the All-Tongue. All-Tongue, also known as All-Speak, is an ability that allows one to understand and speak all languages. The name now makes perfect sense, I bet. It's an ability that all Asgardians have, as well as other deities in the Marvel Universe, and allows an individual to understand what any species is saying in their own native language. It's an ability that we see Thor flex every now and then, but rarely in comparison to his other powers. While this is the ability that Thor possesses, there's actually another similar ability kicking around in the Marvel Universe called Excelsior. Get it? Man-Thing has depicted it. It is the universal language, and anyone who hears it will hear it in their own native tongue. And at 6, Spider-Man talking to spiders. Spider-Man has the ability to communicate with spiders. Sort of. This became a thing primarily in the Queen story arc, where Peter's powers were amplified and then he could communicate with spiders. It was further increased after his encounter with the giant spider god, the Great Weaver. But after the One More Day story arc where Peter finds himself making a deal with Mephisto in order to save Aunt May, many of those powers he had gained were lost or returned to their original strength. But there was also a time during Donny Cates' run on Doctor Strange in Doctor Strange issue 390 where Strange creates a separate realm for Spider-Man where he and a man-sized spider walk around having have a chat and skip stones on the water. Peter even gets an adorable yellow sweater while in this dimension to wear over his suit. The spider asks him where he puts criminals' bodies while they're dissolving if he doesn't have a web, to which Peter responds that he doesn't eat his enemies, and the spider does not seem overly impressed. It's also worth noting that Kane got a similar ability to communicate with spiders in Scarlet Spider issue 5. Fun fact. And at 5, Superman and shapeshifting. With a history as long as Superman's, he's bound to have a slew of nifty abilities from the Golden and Silver Ages that no one ever addresses or uses in his stories anymore. Superman has a lot of pre-crisis abilities that have never seen the light of day since. One such ability is his shape-shifting power, hailing from a 1947 comic, Superman issue 44. In the story, Superman finds himself needing to impersonate a famous stuntman, so he uses his super muscular control to essentially shapeshift into said stuntman. It is also a trick that he used to stop his heart from beating and fake his own death once upon a time. And then in Superman 45 he took it to the next level, where he shapeshifted into an extraterrestrial called a collector to fool the other collectors into returning to their own dimension. The panel describes the process as Superman twisting and turning until he became the form that he wanted, although he somehow managed to also acquire a set of alien clothes to put the whole look together, so maybe back then he was just really into fashion. In at 4, Magneto and his magnetic personality. Being an Omega level mutant, Magneto's capabilities and his magnetism are exceptional and broad. But there is one aspect of his powers that was brought up and all but forgotten shortly afterwards: his magnetic personality, an ability he showed off in X-Men Volume 1 issue 18. It's also worth noting that this is something Stan Lee wrote and created, so bless his soul. In that issue, Magneto announces his new power by stating, "Gaze into my eyes, now you cannot turn away, you are held by my magnetic attraction." This was paired with one of his eyes glowing as he stared out at readers in a panel that consisted of pretty much just his face. This magnetic attraction appeared to be a form of mind control, but it also had its failings. It was unable to use on certain individuals, like the Blob, who apparently had a mental block preventing Magneto from gaining control. Either that or he just wasn't very good at it. In at 3, Wonder Woman talking to animals. There's quite a few superheroes out there who can communicate with animals, some to the extent of being able to carry on full-blown conversations with them. Wonder Woman is one of those heroes. While it's not a power she can really make use of in battle, it's often something that has served her on missions or during investigations. We've seen the hero just casually chatting with animals before, which has actually always provided a really lovely insight to her personality. I mean, hey, if you had that ability, wouldn't you want to find out what's really going on in the minds of our mammal buddies? I feel like my cat would have a lot to say. And at number 2, Luke Cage and self-immolation. This is both a really useful ability and possibly an amazing party trick. Luke Cage, Power Man, the bulletproof fellow whose skin is unbreakable, can pull a Johnny Storm and set himself on fire. Sure, he cannot organically create that fire, but if using enough friction or a catalyst like gasoline in a match theoretically, he could survive for a long time while burning, and use that to his advantage in combat. It's because his skin is literally unbreakable. Now in Netflix's Luke Cage series, we did get to see the hero walk away from a blaze covered in flames, but it's something we haven't really seen in the comics. But would really love to. Also, like we said, would make a great party trick. And finally, in at number 1, Superman and his miniature Superman. This is perhaps the most absurd of the powers on our list, hence why it wrangled the number 1 spot. It's an ability that Superman will likely never ever use again. Superman can shoot a tiny version of himself out of his fingertips. This first appeared in Superman issue 125 from 1958 in a story titled Superman's New Power. As the Man of Tomorrow himself describes it, I quote, "See? A tiny replica of myself. The people who made that spaceship were very advanced in science. They must have developed a force that enabled them to project an image of themselves anywhere they wanted." He then goes on to say that it's like his telepathy, which is also another power that we don't really see a lot of these days, and that his powers were embodied in that miniature version of himself, minus his invulnerability. But it does have a downside. His powers are transferred to that replica, so instead he just kinda chills and talks to reporters while the mini version of him goes around and kicks butt. The story then takes a weird turn. He gets really jealous of his mini-me, so much so that he actually tries to kill it by sending it towards a meteor hurling towards the Earth that contains kryptonite, because of course. Saying, I quote, "If the kryptonite should destroy him, well, that's his tough luck." Talk about savage. After it disappeared when coming into contact with that kryptonite meteor, Superman then gets all philosophical, wondering if it had a life of its own. And that's where the story ends. just like that. It's kind of weird and bleak. Alright, there we have it, friends. What other superpowers that are not in use can you think of? Give us a shout in those comments below and let us know. If you dug this video, spread that love, hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe to Top 10 Nerd if you haven't already. We'd love it if you join the Nerd Squad. In the meantime though, thanks for watching, friends. I'll catch you all in the next video.